Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to be discussing the social risk. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Let's go ahead and jump in. The social risk, I think, provides a fascinating view of the Cryptoverse because it helps us understand or anticipate future moves within the asset class. It helps us to better understand where relative strength may be. If the social risk is trending down or going sideways at low levels, then it generally means that Bitcoin dominance is going up. If the social risk is putting in higher lows, it generally means that the Bitcoin dominance is going down, which is what many of you have come to know as alt season. So, I have been of the view for a long time that after the halving, we would see a drop in social risk, not because of anything wrong with crypto, but just simply based on monetary policy, right? High interest rates, it's really starting to squeeze the consumer, and it just really puts a drag on risk assets, right? Especially higher risk assets like alts against relatively lower risk assets like Bitcoin. So with that in mind, right? With that in mind, we talked a lot about how monetary policy plays a bigger role than I think a lot of investors would care to admit. And while there have been a lot of people speculating that everyone would come back in droves to the Cryptoverse after the halving, my point was, after the halving, if someone hasn't already come, like, why are they then going to come after the halving, right? Now, I do think they will come after the halving, but not immediately after. And the reason I say that is because I think that it's going to require looser monetary policy for them to come back. So my guess as to what happens is the social risk is coming back down here and staying low. People, I think, are going to start giving up on altcoins, on their Bitcoin pairs. And that's where I think alt Bitcoin pairs will finally go into their final capitulation process. When people are like, oh crap, all these people, all these influencers that said just wait till after the halving, that's when alt season occurs. What happens if that doesn't happen immediately? Some of the shorter term investors might be like, I'm not dealing with this, I'm just going to get out. And that's where you get sort of this higher low or potential double bottom in social risk. Now remember last cycle, when the social risk came back down here in mid-2019, it also corresponded to gold breaking out. It also corresponded to ETH Bitcoin breaking down. That's ultimately where Bitcoin dominance found a top. So my guess is that Bitcoin dominance is going to top sometime a little later this year as the social risk is down here when no one cares anymore. Because when people don't care, the bid for altcoins relative to Bitcoin sort of disappears. If you're not familiar with what the social risk is, it's essentially an average of 5 different metrics. And those metrics are new YouTube subscribers to various crypto YouTube channels, views to various crypto YouTube channels, new followers to analysts on Twitter who focus on cryptocurrency, new followers to exchanges on Twitter, and new followers to layer ones on Twitter. And if you take all of those and you average them out, you get something that looks like this. And you'll see that there's sort of an ebb and flow to the Cryptoverse, right? We go through periods where it's going up and periods where social interest is going down. And really, it's been going down since May of 2021, and then it found a low here in September of 2023. It also found a low over here in December of 2018. Remember, I've said it seems like a lot of things in this cycle are shifted by about 9 months in the sense that you saw this, you saw some of these rallies by some altcoins, just like you did over here in 2019. But ultimately, because the social risk was not in a durable uptrend back to the highs, those altcoins just kept on bleeding back to Bitcoin as the social risk ultimately came down. And that's what represented true capitulation by alt Bitcoin pairs right here. It was after everyone bought over here, thought they were a genius with altcoins, and then those alts went back down and put in new lows against Bitcoin. And you're actually seeing that take place right now, right? You're actually seeing that take place right now. It's not this like nebulous future concept, you're seeing it take place. You can see it throughout the cryptoverse, right? ETH Bitcoin just put in new lows a couple weeks ago. ADA Bitcoin, it's below 800 sats. We talked about this forever, that it was likely going to go below 800 sats, and now it is. Matic Bitcoin, you know, I mean, a lot of these altcoins just keep on dropping against Bitcoin. They keep on putting in new lows. And the reason, and collectively, you can see that alt Bitcoin pairs are struggling. And I think it's not going to take much longer for them to break down. And the reason is because no one's here, right? I mean, just no one's here to care. This is a view I've expressed for a long time, and it's made a lot of people upset with me because they've always said, well, you know, alt season is going to occur. They thought it would occur after the halving, right after the halving because of whatever reason. But my point has always been, well, what if it's not based on that? What if it's based on monetary policy? And the only reason the altcoins were going up to begin with was because Bitcoin was going up. You see, I mean, that's the same thing. That's the same trend as 2019, right? Bitcoin went up, it took alts with it, but Bitcoin outperformed. You know, the people that give me a hard time about altcoins because they made money on alts, yes, some alts went up, but most of them underperformed Bitcoin, just like most of them did in 2019. Yes, there's some that didn't, but most of them have. And as the social risk comes back down over here, that was in, you know, September of 2019, that was ultimately where alt Bitcoin pairs finally bottomed out. Right? As the social risk came back down, which is where we currently are headed, right? You can see that we're going back down into those lower risk bands. So my guess is that just like over here, alt Bitcoin pairs are going to bottom out. My guess is this summer. So, and a lot of times in the summertime is when the Bitcoin dominance goes up, right? So keep an eye on this because we saw that happen last cycle. We saw social risk go all the way back down to some pretty low levels. And it was in this area as the social risk found a low and then sort of bounced around those lows. That's where alt Bitcoin pairs were holding support when the social risk finally started to hold support. So that's what I would look for, right? That's what I would look for over here. And again, people just simply haven't come back yet. That's the reality. And if you don't believe me, go look at YouTube views. You know, I mean, look at this major spike going into March, and then it's been bleeding ever since. You know, you could, I mean, currently all these YouTube channels here are averaging around 920,000 views a day. But if you look at a 3-day SMA, that's on a 7-day. If you look at a 3-day SMA, they're averaging 877,000 views a day. And then if you look at today, it's actually slightly up at 1.1 million. But I mean, it is very much a stochastic process. Look at a 30-day estimate of it, and you can really see how it has fallen off quite a bit after the halving. And you can also see that in terms of YouTube subscribers, we've seen that fall off a lot, right? I mean, that's been dropping a lot too. So I'm not of the opinion that, you know, that this trend is going to last forever, but I am of the opinion that it can last until the Fed pivots to looser monetary policy. And so that's why I think there's a decent chance that as the social risk comes down into this area and spends some time over here, that's ultimately where I think alt Bitcoin pairs bottom out, which is why I think it could actually bottom out this summer. I'm expecting, you know, potential rate cut within a few months or so, which could ultimately mark the bottom for alt Bitcoin pairs. So this is something that's really interesting to follow. And of course, we can also look at other things as well. Besides YouTube views, there's certainly other metrics that we can look at, like the Twitter. If you look at Twitter followers to various analysts on Twitter, you will see that we saw a pretty big surge, but now it's actually, you know, kind of gone negative here over the last couple of days or so. If you look at exchanges, also very, you know, a ton of hype going into the halving, and then it's actually been bleeding quite a bit ever since then. And then also the same thing with layer ones, right? A lot of hype going into the halving, and then a big sort of correction, and now it's sort of getting back to where it was before. So again, my thought process is that what if this is your mid-cycle top, right? Last cycle, mid-cycle top was in June of the pre-halving year, and then rate cuts occurred. What if now the mid-cycle top is March of the halving year, and then rate cuts occur? you go back down into these lower risk bands for social risk. Alt Bitcoin pairs finally bottom out this summer. And then later on this year, we get looser monetary policy, and then people start to come back to the cryptoverse. And then maybe in next year sometime you actually get the alt season that everyone wants, where Bitcoin dominance starts to go down. But there's no denying the fact that everyone who has spent the last 2.5 years calling for alt season were too early. They were too early, because the dominance of Bitcoin just continues to go up. I mean, again, people can say what they want, but for the most part, they would have just been better off with Bitcoin than having a lot of exposure to the altcoin market. Because while some alts do get nice bounces, a lot of them just end up bleeding back down and ultimately putting in new lows against Bitcoin. And you can see that alt Bitcoin pairs are starting to roll over again potentially here. Others Bitcoin, also showing some weakness. I think it's going to keep on fading. And I think that the way to figure out when this trend is over, when this move is over, is to look at the social risk and see, all right, is it bottoming out or not? Or is it just continuing to go down? So far, it's continuing to go down, but we will keep an eye on it. Again, if you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. Check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.